I'm Jay.
And I'm Hilary. Welcome to the PowersShift Podcast.
Let's just first start and talk about like a little
Did you
break.
just fling your hand at me?
I can talk about the break and
Talk
how
about
I've been
that.
half-assing it here.
Right.
And then let's just like actually catch people up with, let's do a check-in. Like, where are you at personally? Like, what's going on in your personal life? What are you focusing on?
Yeah.
And then we can kind of ease into.
You can go first.
Okay.
So this is episode 27. You're not allowed to drink that as we do the podcast.
Yeah, episode 27, Dad. We're
Yeah.
growing up.
It's a lot.
Living our best life in our 20s.
Right.
Yeah, so here we are for episode 27. I'm excited. I feel like we haven't filmed in a while.
We haven't. There's a lot going on.
And you're pissed off at me.
Huh?
And you're pissed off at me.
No, I'm not.
Because I haven't been showing up. No, life has been...
Distraction.
Yeah, life has been super busy. In a good way, I feel like. All amazing things, big changes coming our way that we can talk about. But yeah, so on today's episode, we're going to get to this, but we're going to be talking about the practicality of faith. That's kind of big picture, big picture topic. But
Yeah.
before we get into that, Dad, share with me.
Why don't you go ahead
What?
and share with me
About what?
what's been going on in your life? I don't see you much.
Yeah. So I think there's been a big shift for me in the last maybe month, I would say, I guess, of I think I let go of a lot of pressure I was putting on myself in regards to finances, business, making money. And when I let go, what?
This is a scene of Titanic where that guy's going, "I'm the king of the world," on the front of the boat, and there's an iceberg coming.
That was a different scene.
I know, but it's like setting it up. It's like
Is that what you're
you
saying?
don't even know.
Is that what you're saying about my life?
No, it's just
We just watched Titanic whenever I was in Colorado. Kik and I.
I mean, like 9 years ago.
No, like a couple weeks ago.
Just kidding.
Which I feel like every time Kik and I are together, we watch Titanic.
And cry.
Yeah,
and
bawl.
Then, and watch Stand By Stand By Me?
Yeah, or Uncle Buck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, before you interrupted me.
Sorry, I'm working on it. Hurry up. No, I'm just kidding. Say what you're gonna say.
I literally just
in coaching,
started.
it's called bottom line it.
Something that you're an expert on, right?
Yeah, that's
Mr.
me. I'm a bottom liner. Bottom feeder.
You're a hard candy shell head.
You have a hard candy shell.
No, so once I like kind of relinquished, I feel like, control and just letting go of the pressure I was putting on myself with different business ventures, literally like the next day I started getting more opportunities. And it's just, for me, it's this image of when I come to God and I have my hands full and I can't really like reach out for him. So it's this surrendering and letting things go. And it's like a flip is just flip is switched.
Yeah.
The switch is flipped.
That.
Which one is it? A switch is flipped or a flip is switched? And so that's been exciting because and I've talked about this on previous episodes, but in real time, I'm learning how to trust God with the day-to-day, with my daily bread, and specifically with money. And that's been really hard because for the last 5 years, I haven't had to worry about that because I always had a lot in the bank. I made it a point and a goal to save money. And I felt like because I had X amount of dollars in the bank that my issues around money and how, I've tied my worth to money, I thought that had basically gone away because I had a lot of money in the bank. And being able to like come home and use those funds to live and then get to a place where I didn't have a lot of money in the bank, it's made me realize like, oh shoot, like these issues that I've had, like lifelong issues, are starting to come up and reveal. And it's good because it's God and I working through them. And so I feel like I'm just getting deeper into trusting God with that. And it's really cool to see and watch myself and God like dance with that and like see his fruits and see like when I partner with him and I trust him, even if it's just a little bit, half a step, like I see the fruits of that. And it's just, that's where I'm at right now is I'm getting more opportunities and I'm out there more and I'm working more and doing things that I want to be doing. And it's just been cool to take what I'm learning and seeing it like evolve, I guess.
Is it just business opportunities, or are you having opportunities just in your spiritual growth and interactions with people using your gifts and talents?
Yeah, I think it's all of I think it's it's the alignment of body, soul, and spirit that I feel. Sometimes I feel it's very much aligned, or it gets closer, and other times I feel like it's all out of whack. But yeah, I feel like with
like what specifically, what's kind of stuff's going on?
Well, I feel like right now I feel like things are aligning, and I feel very
What things? What are things? What do you mean?
I would say a big thing I struggle with is my negative self-talk, and I have been really working hard to catch myself in those moments and not get caught up in the negativity or the me beating myself up. And so because I'm giving myself grace and I'm being gentler with myself, I feel like there's more flow. Like I'm not resisting. Sometimes when I feel like I get really caught up in the pressure that I put on myself, whether it's with work or whatever role it is, being a good friend, being a good daughter, all these roles that I'm, trying to be good at, quote unquote, like when I just like surrender and flow in that, and it's just, there's this ease that I'm in right now, where then I go through these periods where I'm like bumping into crap and I'm, or there's resistance and I feel a block. Like I don't feel like in my creativity that things are flowing. And there's many layers to that. I don't know if that's answering your question and being specific, but I just feel like I'm in a flow right now and it feels really good.
Well, yeah, the negative talk, and then how your spiritual your relationship with God, how does that affect the spiritual talk?
The negative talk, you mean? Or
Yeah, like we come to the table with how we were born, where we were born, and our nurture, how we were nurtured, and that affected choices we've made and decisions we've made that creates this behavior. Like as you pursued a relationship with God, is that part of getting rid of is that part of that relationship with God that's helping you get rid of self-talk, negative self-talk?
Yeah, I think so, because it's giving me the intentionality and the awareness of how I approach each day, or how I approach whatever is like the task at hand, because I'm day to day, I'm being mindful of like having my morning time, and really just being still, being quiet. That I think is huge for me to just like kind of gather myself, because I think we tend to, I'm saying we, but I do think it's we tend to spread ourselves over all these areas of our lives, and it's like you have bits of your soul over here, you have pieces over here, over here, over here, and so I need that time to really like focus in on recollecting every part of who I am, if that makes sense. Yeah. And yeah, I think it's it's still on top of that. There's the struggle, but I think it's how I'm approaching the struggle. Like I got really sad.
What struggle?
The struggle.
You got sad with what?
Sorry, I'm all over the place. This matcha is kicking in.
Yeah.
No, I was having a conversation with KK and a couple other friends of the things I'm saying no to right now. It's for bigger yeses down the road, and that's always been a struggle for me, because I'm very much in the present moment. I like adventure. I like spontaneity. I'm like, let's go, let's do this. And a friend of mine who I don't know super well, she invited me on a really big adventure, a 10-month kayaking trip.
Wow.
And every part of me, not every part, but the majority of me is like, hell yeah, let's go. Like, I want to go, like, tomorrow. Just like that adventurous spirit in me that's just like, is a yes person. And it's hard, and it's kind of sad because I can't really say yes right now. I mean, I can, but I'm choosing to say no because I'm building other things. I'm building my business. As a family, we're all talking about going in on, land together, building a collective, and it's hard for me because I think it touches on my issues around commitment and then patience because I want stuff now. And so something that is taking years to build, that's just hard for me because I tend to just give up and not. I'm like, well, I tried, and I tried for maybe 6 months to a year. I didn't try for like a few years or years even, to excel or to grow or develop this dream. And so there's a part of me that I wrestle with in terms of I miss that version of myself who's still in me, who's like, yes, let's just go. Let's go travel the world. Let's go just be adventurous. And it doesn't matter how much, money I have in the bank. I'll figure it out in 10 months, But I'm not 20 anymore. I'm not in my 20s. Like, I want to build things that I can see that are bigger picture and down the road.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
it's, and like that, I can be, I'll have moments of being really sad with that, but
sounds like maturity to me.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, like I can be sad, cry, like, it's okay to miss those parts of myself or yearn for those kind of things, and then also just give that to God and be like, okay, God, like I'm trusting right now that what we're doing together and what I'm choosing to say yes to in my life right now is exactly where I'm meant to be.
And then planning for those things.
Yeah. Anyways, that's where I'm at, and it's exciting though. I mean, we have KK and Matt, so my sister and brother-in-law moving here soon, a baby on the way with them.
Yeah.
So a lot of big changes, and it's all can sometimes be overwhelming and scary, but it's just a really exciting time because I think that we're all on the same page about what it is we're trying to build, and we're doing it together, and it's just fun, even when it's not fun.
Yeah. The anticipation.
Yeah. Anyways, that's a lot about me, Dad. So what about you? Tell me about you. What's going on in your world? I feel like I haven't talked to you much because I was gone traveling.
Yep.
I've been working, so I just haven't seen you as much.
One of your many flaws. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Thanks.
No. I was just thinking as you were talking, a lot of the stuff in you, I know where you got it. You got it from me. Because wow, I'm like that too.
Yeah. Like what?
Just, money's never been I was talking to Uncle Collie, your uncle, my brother-in-law, this week about money. And, Collie, one of his gifts is making money.
Yeah, he's very good at it.
He's good at it, and he's got a lot of wisdom. And we were just talking about, I've never been motivated by money. I like having it. I don't like not having it. But that's an excuse. And he didn't say that. I felt like I saw that. It's like, just because you're not motivated by it doesn't mean you shouldn't know how to handle it, know how to use it for good and things like that. But I feel like where I'm at is still at the, I've talked on a couple of the podcasts about being at this wall spiritually, and it's a good place. I've never been here before, at least knowingly or with awareness, and it's I've said this to so many clients of mine that it's okay to not know, but I really don't know exactly all that being here means. I've started asking a lot of questions about my faith and why I've done what I've done for 50 years, or not done or not been, and what you were saying about being a good person is, I really feel like what God's showing me is I don't want you to worry about being good or being bad. I want you to focus on being
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
without
good.
all the other stuff, and just press in. So, and you were talking about your meditation and your devotional stuff. For me, that is, I feel like I'm part of being a disciple and an apprentice of Jesus and the way is building rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
building a cadence in life.
Yeah.
And I'm so not wired that way.
Right.
So it's become a discipline, and then part of that is keeping joy in that process.
Well, how do you do that?
I don't know, because
Do you feel like you are doing that?
I think it's starting. I'm just being very honest. The way I grew up is being a believer, quote, Christian, whatever we called it then, wasn't a very joyful thing most of the time.
Right.
Most of the time it was hard work and a big pain in the butt, and you're always looking over your shoulder because you felt like God didn't like you that much,
Mm-hmm.
and which wasn't true, and it was the filter that I had. It was all about, here, check that box. You didn't kill anybody today.
Yeah.
You didn't yell. You whatever.
It was all religion. It
Yeah, just
wasn't.
Bo talks about that.
Mhm.
Religiosity, and I'm going to be 69 next month, and I feel like people talk about deconstruction. I'm deconstructing my faith, whatever. Well, I feel like what I'm doing is reconstructing. It's like um, Jesus came in and he said, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is here or is at hand,
Mhm.
and that ought to be a joyous thing. So if it isn't joyous in me, what is it? What are the causes of that?
Mhm.
And what are ways that as I lean into God and into being an apprentice, that my that I that that turns to joy,
Mhm.
a light burden. My yoke. Jesus said, "My yoke is easy, and my burden is light." Well, how come it doesn't feel like it? Well, maybe it's your perspective.
Right.
Maybe it's your attitude. Um, Maybe you're still trying to earn it. Maybe you're still trying to do all this stuff that Jesus never said do.
Right.
So that's part of what's going on. The other thing is, and all this is kind of the thread is, your mom and I are going to join this Anglican order called the Order of the Mustard Seed, and it's been a year of preparation. So,
Mhm.
creating a rule of life.
Do you
Um,
have that built
yeah,
yet?
that was what we were talking about yesterday. My rule of life is to be true to Christ, be kind to everyone I meet, and as I go, take the good news to the nations. At which, and how I do that is my role and my gifts and mission is to affirm, validate, encourage, challenge, and support
Mhm.
whoever God puts in my way or on my path. And so I was doing a lot of that before, but now there's this awareness, and um, I wouldn't say it's not a burden, and if it is a burden, it's a light burden, but it's just this responsibility and awareness that that's what I need to be about. At my age, I don't need to go sit in a corner and go and figure out what's wrong with millennials and Gen Zers and Gen Alphas. We need to be investing.
Mhm.
And part of what I see in being part of this new order, this not this new order, this old order, is that all that what God is doing is, I said that like that's all He's doing. No, everything that God is doing has created awareness about what our responsibilities, I guess, as followers of Him and the way are.
Mhm.
So investing in you, investing in young pastors like Bo and Rachel,
Mhm.
uh, and how to do it. I don't think we're that good at it sometimes. Some people are just better at it, but
Yeah, I think you're good. I feel like you do such a good job at just being there for people and listening to people and giving people your time and presence, That's one thing I've noticed, even though we've been at this place of the wall, it made me think of like, well, what aspects of yourself are you allowing to be expressed, and where are you sharpening, where is God, I guess, sharpening those parts of who you are. And one of those I see with you is like making time for the youngers. I feel like you do a really good job of that. And then I've noticed too your
Thanks.
creativity. Like
Yeah.
you're writing so much, you're making music, like you're doing the beat, you're making necklaces and rosaries, like you're doing a lot of hands-on, like you're expressing where you're at right now through the arts. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that
That's part of the order is creativity.
right. That's a very important one too. I feel like, and even with my spiritual director, she's Jenna, she's a musician, and she works with a lot of creatives, and she said this a year ago, but that is God is reclaiming the arts,
I believe that.
how do we allow ourselves and to be the instruments of God and create and in whatever capacity. I mean, that can be from everything from food to music.
Yeah,
Building, whatever it is, like
totally. I mean, you bring yourself.
So that's been cool to see.
Yeah,
That's why I was saying, like, get your freaking Spotify going. So
yeah, it's all it's that relationally, like you said, we're getting ready to have. This house has got about 2,600 square feet, so it's not little, but we're fixing to have 6 people in here. KK's pregnant and the baby's due in December, and just all of that. I feel like it's almost like it's like a test run for what we want, what we feel like God's calling us to, and leaning into people who have other gifts and talents, and learning from them and letting other people speak into you. That's scary. You don't let everybody speak into you, but people that have proven track record and you can trust them. Things like that so that you grow. It's really a growth season right now.
Oh, and it's I don't know if the right word would be redefining, but this is in the book that we're both reading, The God Story. I'm on the section of the church, and Bo's been talking a lot about that too, of what does church even mean? What does the body of Christ even mean? And I feel like so many churches there's an unraveling, there's a revealing happening of like, okay, this doesn't work.
Restoring. Yeah. We're being restored.
Yeah, and how do we practically, I mean, that we can kind of ease into our topic, because it's like, okay, we get, there's religion and there's faith and all that stuff, but what does that actually mean in relevance to day-to-day life, the practicality of applying being followers of Christ and being disciples? And it all looks good on paper, and you can say, oh yes, I read my Bible every day, oh yes, I do this, like, but then what is it like? How do you actually live in a way where you're truly bringing the light and the peace and the joy of God?
How do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, good question. So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, Bo and I've had some conversations about this at times. The way I see that is some people think that relationships aren't that important in the body of Christ. I think that's the point. Jesus came as he said he was going to come. Gave us act. He said, I'm coming. I'm the way. I'm the door. You walk through me. To what? Well, by the power of the Holy Spirit that he said, I'm going to leave with you, so that we have the ability and power to live this life. All the stuff around it is a means to an end, and the end is relationship. So the big thing about Christianity that I'm learning, weirdly at this age, is that it's the religious stuff, all the spiritual formation, all that stuff, even discipleship, all of that is a means to an end. All of that builds relationship with God, our Father, with the Holy Spirit, and with Jesus, and each other.
Yeah, and I think it's all encompassing. if you can't have one without the other,
Right.
and vice versa.
It's a community. It's a family. It's all those things. And if you look at just looking at our culture right now, 6 out of 10 marriages, if somebody even decides to get married in our current culture, they don't last.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure we know exactly why. One of the big ones that we're going to talk about is we don't know how to communicate
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah.
As generally in marriage counseling and even in corporate settings where I was for 25 years, is the number one issue that came up every time wasn't money or resources like that. It was, we don't know how to effectively communicate with each other.
Well, and you have to be able to build. You don't have to, because you have all these different tiers of relationships, whether it's a stranger, to your colleagues, to your friend group, your social communities, then your family, then yourself and God. And so there's all these different tiers. But yeah, one thing Christ said is that was going to set Christians apart was people were going to be able to look at them and see by the way that they love each other that's what made them different.
How are we doing on that? Because Jesus said, "Love your neighbors, you love yourself." Right? It's one of the
Right.
things. Yes, he said, and so I'm going. One of the teachers that we liked, Dallas Willard, said, Jesus is apprenticing us, so that part of which we can spontaneously love our enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, if I'm honest, a lot of days I don't even love my family the way Jesus was teaching us to do that.
Yeah.
And so how do you love your
yeah.
enemies if you don't even love yourself?
Yeah, it's like, I forget what book I was reading, but it was something along the lines of, it's easy to sit in a temple or a sanctuary and pray and be so heavenly and peaceful. Like, try to love your spouse, like try to love the people who are right in front of you. And it tends to, I'll have days where, I feel that peace, I feel that joy, I feel like I'm so spiritual. And then, your mom looks at me the wrong way, and
or we get on each other's nerves. I mean, you're living in close proximity.
Right. Well, so that brings up, what us about talking about what we're going to talk about, which I guess we already are talking about, but whatever. How do we exercise and express our relationship with God? What does that even mean? Like, how does that actually change or shift the story? And the example was, we were at a gathering, and I was having a really deep, awesome conversation with a friend, and another person came up and stood there, which is fine, no big deal, but then basically made a joke about how I was hugging this person. And then they jumped into the conversation. Really, they took over the conversation and started talking. And
they ambushed it.
Yeah, completely dismantled it. And after 20 minutes of not being able to get a word in, I just left. And I felt bad after, because it was like, why in that moment? One, I tend to struggle with my voice and being heard. So how can I learn practically with the people who I'm choosing to do life with, I'm in the body with, how can I learn to use my voice? And that I've always struggled with that. And I felt like in that moment I did it, and it's a learning opportunity for me. But so that was just one example of like, okay, how do we effectively communicate with love and have grace and passion with it? Like, we can get on each other's nerves, we can hurt each other, hurt our feelings, blah, 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 blah. And that we should be able to basically like shake hands at the end of that and be like, okay, this is helping me grow. No matter what side you're on. If you're the one who's pissing someone off or vice versa, I want to help create an environment where you're addressing these things head on in a way that is like, I heard this term last week, untamed grace. How do we have untamed grace for ourselves and with other people, so that when we have miscommunication or issues arise, that we handle it in a way that is full of that untamed grace that God gives us.
Well, kind of laying a foundation of that, and we did do some studying and just had we talked about this before we talking about it, but
We talked about this before.
Right. I think
another
there's
conversation where we talked about it.
Yeah, that you have to understand some dynamics around communication, and I think one of the things I've learned being older now, which is weird to think about,
Yeah.
is that generations
Mm-hmm.
have different communication styles.
Mm-hmm.
With the advent of, I remember when there wasn't an internet.
Right.
I remember it. I was married and had you kids, I think, in the early 80s when we were just starting to know about it, and, and all that. But I was thinking older generations kind of see, like in that situation, without getting into the details, older generations kind of see that interruption as an engagement. And it also depends on what part of the country you're from. If you're from New York,
Yeah.
or wherever, New Orleans, whatever, different parts of the
South,
country.
yeah, the South has their own way of how you handle social awkwardness and
Well, in Pittsburgh,
social norms.
in Pittsburgh, they just blurt it out.
Yeah, you just say it right to their face, and it's literally not even a thing.
Right.
But I feel like we were raised, I feel like I have been pretty timid in my social responses to people.
We grew up
not feeling like I could say no, or not feeling like,
and then I don't know. Yeah, I know where that comes from. I think, but we think, well, younger, in that situation where the older person felt like they were engaging by interrupting. I think I tend to do that. Younger people kind of look at that as disrespectful, and so what that does is creates this tension.
Mm-hmm.
And one way I think we can deal with that would be to talk about it, but actually practice it in real time and be able to have, you and I were talking about this, we know the areas where we're pretty good at. We have blind spots. We want to know how can I improve? How could I have handled this situation differently? I want my friends, and I want to create that with any relationship, whether it's a best friend or not, that we can have those conversations of hey, out of love, this is an area where, I can see that you need growth, XYZ. And it's not just, we talked about whether it's with effective communication or setting boundaries, nonviolent communication, emotional intelligence. These are all areas that I feel like I have observed where, and this is totally a general statement, but where the church has we don't think they're necessary.
Yeah, the church has kind of failed in this way to teach the how-to of these really important day-to-day things. It's let's just read the Bible and talk about the theology, which is all great stuff, but how do we actually, how do we actually deal with it right now? Those kind of things. Where does the Bible talk about effective communication or emotional intelligence?
This is generational too, but therapy, emotional intelligence, we don't think that's necessary, but it's and we don't even think it's a requirement of being a follower of Jesus. And this is kind of an aside, but a lot of times when people become Christians, especially in an evangelical setting, everybody immediately becomes some sort of expert. Mm-hmm. And we know everything that everybody needs to do. You need to get saved. You need to do this. You need to don't do that. Yeah. Whatever it is we say. And so we become these experts that have something to say, and we don't ever really deal with our blind spots.
Right. And
I know that's a blanket statement.
Well, that's the whole thing. That whole thing is spiritual bypassing. We use these spiritual
excuses.
Yeah, just the narrative around it's so spiritual, so therefore I can avoid.
Do you have to make your mouth make that shape when you do that?
What?
So spiritual.
Yes, I do. That's the whole point. Here, let me just read the actual definition of spiritual bypassing, because I've had to catch myself on this too. So spiritual bypassing is using spiritual ideas, beliefs, and practices to avoid facing real world issues, traumas, and challenges. Whereas like when you're actively, I feel like in therapy, you're dealing with these sort of things head on, and maybe the combo or the place in the middle of spiritual direction, where I feel like you're able to
I think there's a place for therapy. As a certified coach, one of my code of ethics is I will not do therapy with people because, one, I'm not a therapist, and two, there's a place for therapy, and then there's a place for coaching and spiritual direction.
Right.
And so knowing the difference and having an awareness about that. But there's some other stuff like, the psychological and social factors. So, why do you think in that situation you were in that person might have felt this need to interrupt and dominate?
I mean, they felt like they had something really important to say that the other person needed to know, and so that was to them the most important thing for them in that moment. So it was like, it doesn't really matter. Or maybe they were waiting, like I said, maybe they were waiting for a while and still weren't able to. So I don't know that, like that.
Or maybe they could. Well, what about this? Could it be due to insecurity, a need for validation?
Totally.
Maybe they never got heard as a person, or they got ignored as a young person or a child, or maybe it's just a simple lack of awareness.
Yeah,
Some people just aren't aware.
I think that's where I see, like for me, an area where I can grow is being able to confront things as they're happening. I usually end up having to analyze it because it's happening so fast. It was like at the farmer's market when that old creeper man was hitting on me. Mm-hmm. And in the moment, I was just like I couldn't, what?
No, I just think creeper man.
I couldn't say what I needed to say of like, no, you could be my dad, get away. Mm-hmm. Instead I was like, I don't know, let me think about it. And then I afterwards, I analyze it and process it. And I'm like, dude, why couldn't I have said that in the moment?
But some people don't have that problem. They can do that.
I know. That's what I'm saying is like, that's where, again, if a lot of times people don't, like, this person probably just has no awareness that they do that often.
See, and when you didn't know my dad that well, but I could see that behavior that you're talking about and wrestle with sometimes that he did too. And maybe from a generational perspective in our family, Dad was abused as a child, neglected, didn't feel like he had a voice, wanted to make everybody happy, so he didn't say no.
Well, sometimes my reasoning or my logic is like, well, I don't need to rock the boat. It's not that big of a deal, so I can just deal with it on my own.
Right.
And so what I end up doing then is avoiding the conflict, and it ends up either it can build up and create resentment towards myself or the other person, and it I think dominoes into other areas.
But do you think it's possible too, though, that as Christians, generally speaking, we haven't been taught to value effective communication and boundaries as part of our faith?
Probably. I mean,
because the impact on those who are interrupted is uncomfortable, and let's be honest. In the body of Christ, it's the neglected, rejected.
Excuse me.
A lot of people who are wounded and broken who come to Jesus, the meek in heart, the poor in spirit, and so we spend all of our time on the spiritual side, which is important and necessary, but we don't spend the time on the practical side, because Jesus said, "May your kingdom come on earth as it's already come in heaven." Well, what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. That's not some get saved, get baptized, and go to church every Sunday.
Well, I think it's like it ends up being like this free pass to again, to just bypass, like, okay, let's just pray about it. Like, oh, I'll pray about it, or whatever, which I'm not discrediting prayer. I think that's one of the most
We should
important
start there.
things for sure. And I think, how do we co-partner with the divine, in order to address like the things that are actually like our traumas, like that we carry day to day that we don't even realize. Like, we're walking and carrying stuff that happened to us 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'll just pray, instead of like, actually, this requires some work. I love the quote. It's like, you keep asking God to move mountains, like, don't be surprised when he hands you a shovel.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes it's like, okay, God, do this for me, but it's like, you have to do some work too. We gotta meet.
What Dallas Willard also says, this gets people every time you watch. He said, grace is not about earning, but effort is involved.
Right.
You don't do it to earn it. You can't earn it, but that does require some effort. And you said something, Hilary, I want to get this in before you respond, but you talked about embodied experience, and it's about paying attention to people around us and interacting with them as Jesus did. So when you talk about embodied, we're talking about living out our faith in practical, relational ways.
Well, which again, I feel like that's the area that collectively, I feel like the body of Christ is being called to, is like, okay, you're in an actual body, and there's other bodies around you, and you're in an environment that's physical. So how do you walk through that and actually, like, if the Bible is true and it talks about, God is dwelling in our bodies, like, we are living, breathing temples.
Yeah.
And we don't. And I think this was what kept me, I think it was the religious part of, Christianity, is like, I didn't see people treating, like, living that out, like your body as a temple. Like,
yeah, because in reality, what you're saying is if the same spirit, if we believe this stuff, the same spirit that was hovering over the void when God said, let there be light, whatever you want to call that, the Big Bang Theory or whatever, when God said, let there be light, that spirit was hovering over the void. That's the same Holy Spirit that Jesus said, I'm going to leave with you, and the same one that dwells in us. If that's true, then we don't really have any excuses. There's reasons. I get it. I get all that. But I mean, is if we're really walking as close to God as we can and letting him transform us, then all this other stuff should fall in place, it seems.
It would be, you're saying that would be like the fruits, or like the results of, like, our walk with God, right?
Yeah.
Like, spending time with God,
Like,
spending, like, time in prayer or in solitude,
or
whatever.
we say we love our enemies, but how do we do it? How do we say love our enemies, but we don't even love the ones that are closest to us, or the people that are within our own community, or our neighborhood, or whatever. I mean, we say all this stuff and it looks good on paper, but then you living it out is a lot more of a challenge.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I think when I know I referenced this point in my life a lot, but when I left Denver and got out of the chaos of that scene I was living in, and living in a remote village in Thailand, like, that's when I was starting to get into meditating a lot more, and seeing the benefits of, like, okay, or the benefits or the implications of what I was putting into my body, not just food, but everything. Music, people, energies, all of that stuff. Like, that was a draw for me in a spiritual sense, was seeing how the Buddhists around me, how they were treating their bodies, and when they were treating their bodies in a way that, to me, they were treating it with reverence and respect, that kind of poured out in different ways. And then when I moved when I moved back to the States and was in Washington, I was really got into the spiritual scene, and I think that's where it's not even Christianity. It's just where humans go, and we become spiritual, even though we already are spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw, even in that context, in that world, where it's like I was doing all the things. I was doing the ecstatic dance. I was doing the drum circles. I was going to the spiritual center and walking the labyrinth. All these things, and there was still something in my spirit that
A
was
lot
like
of doing.
yeah, but there was still something in my spirit that was like that. I knew that there was more. Like there's got to be more to this. Like and like I saw the same, the same hypocrisy, the same spiritual bypassing in that spiritual world as I did in the Buddhist world, as I did in the Christian world. And it's like, okay, what is it about human nature that when we have a desire to connect with God and we try our darndest to do so, and then we end up throwing up everywhere, like all this kind of just BS stuff. And I'm saying that because I saw myself doing that. It's like I can't sit here and act all holier than thou because I'm meditating an hour every day when that I'm, going off on like, my colleague, or, having resentment towards you and mom, you know what I mean? Like unresolved trauma or issues that I wasn't dealing with. And it's like, okay, this is a Band-Aid. These practices sometimes can be Band-Aids. Like, how do you make them actually get to the root and core of what?
Do you have an answer to that?
Well, I think it's a lot of unpacking. I think it's a
What
lot.
about in a word?
Surrender.
I was thinking humility. So surrender, humility. We have to humble ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And it's like I think that's where I got with my journey in Port Angeles, which I think then led me specifically to Christ, was like I'm trying all this on my own and it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a million different
things,
workshops and classes and la 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 la, and it's not actually getting to the root of what is going on in my spirit. And I think that's where when I had, and I've had a lot, but when I had those encounters with, I just know that it was Christ. I know it was Jesus Christ. Like, and there's something about it's like the human and the spiritual. Jesus has both of those. And so again, it's the embodied part of it. It's not this esoteric, far away concept. It's like, oh, this is a person and I'm literally looking eye to eye with this person, and something is stirring in me deep in my soul that I haven't been able to tap into until now. Yeah. And so that for me was like, okay. And that was in parallel with me doing a lot, like starting to get into therapy and starting to, one thing was healing my relationship with my mom. Her and I always struggled. I feel like you and our relationship was just pretty easy and natural. And so when I started actually addressing the stuff with mom and making an effort to do that, which was really hard, and we cried and we would fight, but we'd have these really intense conversations. And I think it was like there was something deeper going on there that wasn't just us two having a conversation. There was like the spirit
multifaceted, as my friend calls it.
Yeah, the spirit was directing though, and guiding, and like showing up in a big way, like in a deep reservoir of love that, again, I can only attribute to something outside of myself, but it's also within me too. It's something that we house.
Yeah, and you said that at the beginning, just when we were doing the check-in about being patient with yourself. And I think part of what you're talking about is how do we ramp it down and just take the freneticness out of it, that rapid pace, feeling like you just got to go, 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 go. Yeah. And God's going, be still.
Well, yeah, and that there might be all these issues that I need to sort through. And if God showed that to me all at once, I would probably like freaking combust. It just would be too much. And so that it's like taking it, like it's the slow work of God. Like,
yeah.
And sometimes it's hard because the spiritual path can feel relentless, and it can feel, like you said, it can feel burdensome and heavy. And it's like, wait a second, like I can do all this work, and it's good that I'm doing this work, but like I don't have to deal with this all right now.
And the joy of the Lord is our strength. If we aren't feeling joy, I think that's a flag to go, okay, what's going on here? Is this a season where I'm supposed to grieve? I was talking to a Gen Z
Mm-hmm.
who had just broken up with their significant other, and they were really, really sad and felt bad that they felt sad.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't want to be a burden on anybody. Didn't want to call me, and they said, I've been trying to call you for 10 minutes and I kept putting the phone down. What is it in us that doesn't let ourselves be vulnerable like that?
Well, as Charlie in Perks of Being a Wallflower says, we accept the love we think we deserve,
Yeah.
which I love that quote. And I think we, what is it is it Hosea in the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
In my book, in my message version of the Bible, in the beginning, there's an excerpt about Hosea and talking about how, as humans, like, our only experience that we remember and recall, like, is of our parent. Like, that's our first version of love, is our parents, and it's, even though it's a great, awesome love, it's still conditional, and then so we have all these experiences of conditional love, yet we how do you even comprehend a love that's so great, that's out of space, time, and matter?
I don't think you can. I think that's what when we're talking about people who believe and have a relationship with God, and those that don't. I think that's the big conundrum or whatever, is you can't figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mystery.
Yeah, and accepting the mystery, but then I think of experiences. I'd be curious, like, for you, it's like I have these moments of purely being in the present.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the airport, I met this awesome couple, Katie and Mike from Jersey, and we were just like talking before our flight, and we had made eye contact, Katie and I, and just laughed because her husband was talking to the kids, and it was just like chaos in there, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So her and I were just like laughing, but we just were so in the present with each other that it was timeless. And to me, like, that's like when we're not thinking and we're not like having to dissect
Mm-hmm.
whatever logic, everything, like, you're just in the moment. That's when you get these experiences that are, to me, outside of time, space, and matter, where you're in the presence, and when you're in the presence, you're touching eternity, and so you're getting to experience that unconditional love, even if it's just for a moment.
And it's probably harder now than ever before in history, probably, because of all the distraction that's out there.
Well, yeah, it's hard to just be. I mean, when I was at the airport in New Orleans, and I dressed up as a T-Rex, and to be present with people like that forced people to be in the moment, and that was really cool for me and for the other people, like, just the interactions. I mean, I danced with like a little 3-year-old kid, and it was just like this sweet moment, in a.
You did that. You took it out in New Orleans.
Yeah, because we had like three hours,
Yeah.
and so I took it out and put it on and walked all around, and took selfies with people, or talked to a group of girls who were in New Orleans for a bachelorette party. Like, it's just, like, people come together, and when both people are being present with each other. What?
You and Rachel in those outfits, you running on that hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
funny.
it's just, I love that. I was like, shoot, I would literally, if someone paid me to do that, to just wear costumes and go out, and I would do that in a heartbeat if I could get paid to do that, because it's just fun, because it pulls people out of.
Justifies your $100,000 education.
Yeah. Yeah. This is why I have a master's.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, we're it's a good conversation, Hilary. I just was thinking so I don't know if we even want to go here. Let's talk about it. But so, what are some strategies? We're talking about having conversations, but really expanded into just life in general. But if you're trying to have these conversations and you're trying to grow in it, what are some strategies for dealing with somebody interrupting you like that? What are some things you can do? I mean, I wrote some down here. You want me to read them?
Sure, yeah, go for it.
So, some strategies for keeping conversations flowing can be setting the stage for the dialogue to be mutually respectful. You know,
What do you mean by that?
well, you enter that conversation with the intention of listening to understand, not to dominate.
Mm-hmm.
So in that situation, that person had something to say, so they jumped in there and just dialogued, they monologued for 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't stop to be curious, didn't stop to ask questions about the other person.
Mm-hmm.
It was, here, let me tell you something.
Right.
So it's important to create this safe space, and a lot of times we're just not even aware. And then there's nonverbal stuff. Well, I didn't let you respond to that, but we create this space where everyone feels like they can share openly.
Yeah, I think for me it's hard because it takes me longer to process. It's hard for me to, in the moment, to like just process right then and there. But there's a good strategy. Darby talks about it a lot. Like, comes up in AA and all that stuff. But she says like sitting on your hands.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the pause. Like in that moment, it's like I don't have to react. I can pause for a second and be like, okay, I'm feeling away. Pause, like breathe, and ask. I think too that's where it's a good opportunity for me to ask God for guidance in this, and then take the plunge and have the courage to speak up, like,
or not. Like for me, it's the encourage and the discipline to not speak up. It's knowing when to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the struggle for me is when to speak up, and so I think next time it's like, okay, give myself a moment to breathe and say what's going on, and then how can I phrase something like that, like in a way that invites the conversation piece of it, not like jumping down the.
So maybe that's a place you can go. So
I think that's because I think that's what's hard is growing up. We're such a reactionary family.
Oh man,
we would say things that you just word vomit, and I regret. Half of the stuff I say. So it's like sometimes I'll pop off. It's been a while that I've gotten that like heated,
Yeah. I mean, I remember. There's maybe this isn't the time for it, but there's another thing we can do is gracefully redirect a person. Like for example, I wrote these down. Some things you could say is, "Hey, I'd love to hear your thoughts in just a minute, but I was just asking Hilary about effective communication. Could you give us a minute to finish up?"
Yeah.
And not throw rocks at them and beat them up. Or another one be, that's very interesting what you're saying, Jay, but let me just finish this thought with so-and-so, and we can bring that into the conversation.
Yeah.
But just being aware.
And I think that when you say it like that, like it's not a big deal. And I tend to, and I think generally speaking, we're living in a culture right now where everything is so hypersensitized.
Yeah.
Like that everything's a big deal. Everything's offensive. Everything, like just to say no is a big deal.
Right.
Like just to say, hey, you cut me off. Can I finish this? Like why is it developed to the point where all of that's a big deal when it's just literally basic, like this is like conversation 101, how to be an adult,
Well, you and I, this is not for this conversation, but you and I have talked about freedom doesn't mean having the ability to do whatever you want. It's actually the ability to say no to everything, to the things that you want, and have discipline.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about getting what you want. There are other, I think that's where the internet has harmed us, is there's not much respect out there.
Well, I think it's a lack of exercising these skills that we're talking about, like because we don't have to. You can pop up on the internet, and I mean
destroy people.
Yeah, the trolling and all that stuff that goes on. You don't have to like.
Well, no, but you're not accountable,
mm-hmm.
and there's a certain element of accountability that we've kind of lost too. Of, don't be a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to believe anything to not be a jerk. Just treat people the way you want to be treated, and that ultimately is from Christianity and other religions as well. Just treat people the right way. Do the right thing.
Yeah.
Here, another one we were talking about, use inclusive language. I liked this one.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's
What was it?
well. It just says use inclusive language that involves everyone in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure everyone feels heard without letting the interruption take over.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Hilary was just sharing something meaningful. Let's allow her to finish, and then we can hear from others.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't say, "Hey, shut up! You interrupted, you
Right.
big goob." You know, which is what I want to do on the inside.
Yeah.
But then you know, there's things like constructive feedback, setting boundaries, which maybe we don't have time to do in all of this now. But another way to just show respect is don't address that in front of everybody. Pull that person aside. Hey, man, when you do that, I feel like you just disregard what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
and it. You know, I know you don't mean it, or maybe you do, but I
Right.
just wanted to let you know how it makes people feel,
Yeah.
or something like that. Or, yeah, just it's this person that I was talking to said when addressing interruptions or dominating behavior, have a private conversation and use I statements. For example, I've noticed
Right.
sometimes that when you interject, it can disrupt the flow of conversation.
Yeah.
That's what Mark said to me. He goes, I think everyone benefits when we each have time to share fully. His was, you break people's rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
You don't mean to, and what you have to say is fine, but somebody be on a thought, and you do that, and they have to start over.
Right.
Remember Elizabeth Quinlan?
Mm-hmm.
She would go, I'm trying to follow you, but I just don't get what you're trying to say, because we weren't being focused on the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't know if that
We're
fits.
jumping all around.
Yeah.
That was more of like you being a mosaic thinker, which I am too.
Right. Well, what else? So
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think we come back to this a lot too, but I think all of it is the two things. I think it's being curious rather than critical with
Mhm.
yourself and with others, and then the patience and being gentle piece. Like, yeah, Darby and I were having a really good conversation the other day, and she's just doing so much personal work and growing so much, and having grace with ourselves. Like, okay, I missed the mark on this one, or
Mhm.
I handled it, but I could have maybe handled it in a different way, or it was, and I think that's the for me it's scary because I don't like the mess, but I know I'm messy, and so it's hard to admit when it's like I'd rather not say it at all for fear of it completely jacking up and making a huge mistake or fool of myself, and that's like avoidance, and
Yeah.
instead of like, yeah, again, the humility piece and the surrender piece of like, yeah, I messed up, and owning that, like getting to a place where we own and are responsible for our actions.
I was thinking of you and Darby. You've known each other almost 20 years now.
Mhm.
You have actively both worked on your interactions with each other. So you have this honesty, but you also have this respect.
Mhm.
I have friends that I can butt heads with them all day long. Duke became one of those guys. We didn't agree on stuff, but we would argue, get over it, and then go have a beer or whatever. I mean, it's learning one that if you really understand it, then there's a certain element of humility that comes with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think, what we've kind of created in our household, like I've gotten to practice using my voice like with you
Mm-hmm.
and with mom, and having like hard conversations of like I know this is going to hurt them, or I know this is going to be uncomfortable, but having the courage and the boldness to speak it. And yeah, so I think it's cool that we've created that.
You know this about me. Did I interrupt you?
I don't know. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Well, you know this about me. Like we said earlier, I know what it takes a lot to hurt me in terms of I'm a sensitive person, but if you don't attack my character and try to make me look small, you can say almost anything to me.
Mm-hmm.
I can take a lot of it. It's weird, sometimes you get defensive, but most of the time, if it's done with genuine care,
Mm-hmm.
I can take it. I want to know. I want to know
Yeah.
when I'm missing it.
Yeah.
Well, so are we at takeaways yet?
Yeah, let's do some takeaways. Biggest takeaway of the last, I don't know, was this an hour-long conversation?
Probably.
What's your biggest takeaway, Dad?
Well, I got a list.
Okay.
I
I can't
won't.
hear you with your mouth.
Sorry, I won't. I've got some takeaways. And this is just what I'm thinking about in terms of improving conversations. But be present. You say that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Be engaged. Listen actively. Listen to understand, not to correct, dominate, whatever. And as I'm listening actively, then the other one would be is encouraging people to respond.
Mm-hmm.
Allow yourself to be wrong
Mm-hmm.
in those situations. And then, talk about we instead of you. We're in this together. I'm not always right. You're not always right. How do we find common ground and middle ground when we can? How about you?
I would say be mindful of your body and other people's bodies in terms of
Embodiment.
Yeah, body language. This is probably more, I don't know if it's metaphysics or physiology, but the energy exchanges that are happening. Like there's subtle things that when you talk about that, like body language and paying attention to, you can tell when something shifts.
Some people are better at that than others, like you and Kirsten and Jordan can read a room.
That I would say. So in finding the reverence in the human experience, like that's a big one. But like we have every opportunity we can learn something. Like every day is it's like I was on my way home today. I was like, okay, what do you want me to know about today? Like just today, and how do I be just today? I would say that and then taking it back to the untamed grace, like having grace. I think we're hard on ourselves, therefore we're hard on other people. So if I'm going to be a critical a-hole to myself, more than likely I'm going to be that way towards other people, whether I think I am or not.
I know. No. Trust me, I know it. No.
Yeah.
No,
So
it's good.
So yeah, the untamed grace piece, and then maybe that's it. I think that's
okay.
it.
Okay. Well, so I didn't script this, but I kind of did. But so hopefully, what the recap of today would be, what you and I have talked about is maintaining respect, inclusivity in our conversations. All that's really critical, and as we're seeking to live out our faith in practical ways. Interruptions and dominating behavior can disrupt those kind of dynamics of building relationships. But with the right strategies and maybe creating some new habits and having awareness, we can handle those, or we can learn to handle them. We can create new habits and new strategies for change, really. So we talked about the importance of embodied experience, paying attention to those around us, and interacting with them in ways that reflect the love of Jesus. And this includes learning to set boundaries. It's okay to say no, saying no when necessary, and having the courage to speak up in hard conversations, as kind of like you did in that situation you were in.
I think too, it's like it hits on just having an open mind, and not everyone's going to be where you're at, and that's okay.
Almost never will they be where you're at.
Yeah, and that's okay. You can still have an open mind and still, challenge yourself to growth, Yeah.
So. And we want to encourage, we're kind of getting down to the end, kind of wrapping it up, but we want to encourage everyone that's listening, one, to give us feedback, but to kind of take some of these strategies that we were talked about and think about what it would look like and to apply them and how you would do that in your own life. Again, we're not telling you what to do. We're trying to provoke thought,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So don't be afraid to set boundaries, or if you are afraid, get some help with that. That somebody you know that isn't afraid to do that, and because it's part of loving people
Mm-hmm.
as well. And then
I think that's what it's all about. Kind of what you said. It's a human experience is about relationships at the end of
yes,
the day.
yeah,
So
it's up, down, and sideways is the way I
yeah,
look at it as God. And how are we becoming intimate with Him as He invites us to intimacy with Him through the power of the Holy Spirit, through that door that Jesus opened
hmm
and said, "I am the way." You know, I'm the way.
and to me, that's not religion.
That's
That's
total
beyond
no. That's the
religion.
kingdom come on earth,
Hmm
just like it's come in heaven. And we're talking about practicality, living out
Yeah,
what God said.
right.
So, we haven't done this in a while either, but I've heard this call to action, which is, so the next time you're in a conversation, especially in a setting that encourages openness and support, like a community or a church or whatever, consciously practice the stuff that we've talked about.
Well, and I think to simplify it is like pick one of those,
Yeah,
one topic that we discussed, and maybe it's like, okay, just for this week, I'm going to try using this phrase or this conversation, or be open to or have awareness around, you know, whatever, all this.
graciously saying no
Yeah, like that's
or
what I
something.
want to focus on this week or
Yeah,
whatever. And
or graciously saying yes,
hmm yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's a good call to action.
Yeah, I mean, and remember that effective communication isn't just a skill; it's a way of embodying Jesus and His love in our everyday interactions. I mean, what's the point if what Jesus said doesn't actually change us and transform us?
How does that? How do you think someone who doesn't believe in Jesus would relate to that?
That's a good question. Um, what Jesus did is He turned the world right side up. I say, people say He turned it upside down. He
Yeah,
gave us the ability to live a life of peace and joy and contentment, but you have to say yes to Him, and that's not answering your question. That's a good question. I just think that what Jesus said is true spiritually, but it's also true practically. If you didn't
yeah,
believe that Jesus was the Messiah at all, you didn't believe anything, or maybe you didn't even believe that He actually was a real person. If you look at the teachings of Jesus and just did those things, the world would be a totally different place.
yeah.
Um,
If we actually did them.
yeah, and we don't, and yet we
Yeah,
bash Jesus and we use His name in vain, and we want to bash each other. But if we just did what He said,
yeah,
we wouldn't be on the brink of disaster all the time.
right. Yeah. Well, when you said that, he took it a step further. It wasn't just it's way more radical than you know. It's not
Yeah,
just like don't kill somebody. It's like even just having hate in your
yeah,
heart, is like murder. And so
yeah,
how it's this call to be, I think, who got us, who God made us to be. Like that's been my prayer is, God transform who I think I am to who you know me to be.
right. That's a
And
good one. Yeah,
we're limited, and I'm okay acknowledging that, and humbling myself that I have limitations.
hmm
That's not something I'm bashing myself over the head with, but I, as a human being, I can only see so
Well,
far.
it's just true.
But
We have limitations. We
yeah,
don't have to believe it, but it doesn't mean it's not true.
yeah. And so, how do I then partner with the being, the ultimate one who is outside of,
Space and time, and
yeah, and matter, and co-create with him and co-partner and co-love? How does my existence like reflect him and pour out, that
yeah,
kind of love?
And so in reference to that is none of us, the whole inscription that's on the rings from the order of the mustard seed is, uh, I think it's out of Hebrews, but or I believe it's out of Hebrews, but none of us lives for ourselves.
Mm.
I might have that wrong.
Yeah, that's. I think that's the old like the big picture of like in my world, I'm number one.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
and I think that's where you're saying like Christ turns it right side up is that he flips that script and it's like you live to serve other people and that's
Yeah.
not something I want to do every day.
Well, we say that Jesus came and turned the world upside down. Actually, it was upside down. He turned it right side up and he was radically, I mean, upsetting the Roman Empire. The context that he came into,
Mm.
he just slavery. He gave slaves, women, and children choices that they never had before.
Mm-hmm.
In that environment, children and women
Right.
and slaves were chattel. They were just property.
Right.
And he said, "Follow me," and he addressed men in that whole thing too. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
That's the next episode.
Yeah.
Well, as always, Dad, love you.
Love you too.
Glad we got to finally sit down and do this.
Yeah.
And just for those of you listening, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, whatever state of mind
Whatever you're doing, stop. No.
whatever state of mind you're in, just
Quit.
just know that we're for you and we love you. And
Yeah.
even though you piss us off.
What I was thinking too is if you have ideas about thoughts about or some things that you do in your own life that help create these good habits and rhythms, let us know what they are. We'll share them.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
We love y'all.
Yeah. See ya.